everyone, back at it again with another video. I got my ice sled with me, and that means one thing. We're going ice fishing. I'm just looking behind me to make sure I didn't drop anything, which happens more than I'd like. Anyway, these are my tracks I'm following out. And I tested the ice a few days ago in this protected cove. And I know there's 7 inches of good black ice, and that means we're all set for ice fishing. I don't have a lot of time to fish this evening. I only got about an hour before sunset, so we're going to have to try to make the most of that 1 hour fishing time. I kind of have an idea where the fish are located based on my other holes, but you still have to kind of dial them in because they have fins and they swim around and they don't just stay in the same place day after day after day. But I have a general idea of where I want to fish. I'm going to pop some holes with my newly repaired auger, which works great, by the way. That's the bottom half of a laser hand auger with a drill adapter. I like the ones with a metal disc. I've had some with a plastic disc, and the plastic disc eventually breaks. Mostly due to operator error, me carrying it over rocks and trees, and I drop it, or the sled tips over, and everything goes flying, and I break one of those plastic discs. So I like the metal ones. This one, the machining seems to be a little bit loose in terms of the specs, so it's a little bit loose on my auger. And I just filled up the extra space with some electrical tape. It's not the greatest solution, but it works okay. And every season I have to redo that electrical tape. But anyway, it just flies through the ice. I've got 7 inches of black ice, and it's just a few seconds per hole. I kick the shavings with my foot and on to the next one. Zoom, zoom, zoom. The ice is thick enough now I can use it to hold my auger up, which is nice. Alright, let's get rigged up. I've got a 1/4 ounce Leech Flutter Spoon in the perch color. And I've got a little bit heavier duty snap and a little bit bigger hook. Actually, a lot bigger hook. And this is a pretty big spoon for panfish. Most people aren't going to fish panfish with a spoon this big. And the reason I'm doing this is because I have kind of perfect conditions. I've got perfect ice. We already talked about that. But I've got clouds, overcast skies, light winds, falling pressure. I mean, this is almost as good as you can get. And that's another reason I'm out here. I don't have a lot of time to fish today, but I really wanted to get out here and see what I could do. That first hole didn't produce any fish, but the second one did. I have to use a little bit heavier rod with this 1/4 ounce spoon. So I'm fishing with a medium power St. Croix Premier ice rod. And this rod, it's got a lot of backbone. It's pretty fast action, graphite. So it's a lot heavier than I normally fish with for panfish. I've bumped up my main line to 6-pound Fireline ice. And I've got a 4-pound monoliter. There it is. There's a close-up of that 1/4 ounce spoon. The monoliter I'm using is called Suffix Ice Magic in the crystal clear color or clear color. And you could use a lot of other things. You could use 4-pound mono from some other brand. You could use 4-pound fluoro. You could use some copolymer 4-pound. For panfish like these on a good day when they're active, it really just doesn't matter. I could see this next fish coming in on camera, and it was a little bit bigger than the sunfish. Pulling some drag, putting a bend in that bigger rod. That's the rod I use for Lakers, bass, pickerel if I'm in a big pickerel pond. So it's more than up to the task of handling these crappie and bluegill and perch. But that's a pretty nice crappie. There's that 1/4 ounce Leech Flutter Spoon. They like that big spoon. And it really does flutter, like the name implies. That you can watch it on camera, and it really does flutter on its way down. It calls fish in from a wider distance, and the fish seem to really like it. And the way I fish it, if you watch my rod, I tend to be kind of aggressive. So if I don't see any fish on camera, I'm going to be using bigger motions, trying to call fish in. But when they're actually on camera, I can see fish, or if I didn't have a camera and I was just getting bites and missing them, I slow way down, and I'm just kind of waving that spoon at them. I'm giving a little jiggle. Not a bad bluegill. It takes a pretty decent bluegill to bite that size of a hook and that size of a spoon. You're kind of only limited by how far they can open up their mouths. I mean, physically open their mouths. Because you put like a striper bucktail down there, they can't physically open their mouths big enough to get around the hook. So at a certain point, you're running into the limitations of nature. But this is pretty big for bluegill. Most people wouldn't fish a 1/4 ounce spoon with a number 4 hook on it for bluegill. Anyway, you can see right now I'm moving that rod tip about an inch. It's not like starting a lawnmower or something, or starting a snowblower. You're not ripping that spoon 3 feet up when the fish are nearby. You can pound it like I'm doing right now. You can jiggle it. You can give it a wave. You can mix up your retrieves, or I guess it's not retrieves, mix up your jigging motions and see what the fish respond to. But if there's no fish on camera, I'm more aggressive. If there's fish on camera or I'm getting bites and missing them, I'm much less aggressive. I'm much more controlled in how far I'm actually moving the rod tip. Now here I'm kind of pounding it in place, pounding it. But every once in a while I'll give that spoon a pause and just let it sit there. And a lot of times they'll hit it on the pause. It doesn't even have to be a really long pause, but at some point you want to give them a chance to actually eat it. So besides calling in more fish from a distance and generally catching a better caliber of fish, it also eliminates the small fish. So I was catching, in previous trips, I was catching a bunch of 6-7 inch perch, and they're really too small. This bait is about half their size. It's really too small for the little perch, but the big perch have no problem getting a bait like this in their mouth. So that's another reason to fish bigger spoons like this if you could possibly get away with it. And again, I'm kind of getting away with it because the conditions are perfect, but this is the time you want to go big. If this was a completely different day and it was high pressure, bluebird skies, 20-mile-an-hour north wind or east wind, which is worse, what the fish do sometimes is they'll actually turn and run away from the spoon if it's too aggressive or too big. Or they'll come in and just look at the spoon. They won't eat it. They won't even attempt to eat it. They'll just come in and look. And in that case, you have to downsize your spoon. And if that doesn't work, downsize your line, downsize your rod, go from a medium rod to an ultralight, to a super ultralight, to a noodle rod. And eventually you get down to a noodle rod, 2-pound test, and a tiny tungsten jig. And if they won't eat that, and you know what they are on camera, then it's time to call it a day, because that's about as low as I go. 2-pound straight mono and a tiny tungsten jig. If they won't eat that, then it's time to go home and have dinner. Towards dusk, I started getting into a school of pumpkin seeds. Now, pumpkin seed sunfish are similar to bluegills. They have that characteristic pumpkin seed pattern on their side, but they can't open, this is a bluegill, but they can't open their mouths quite as far as the bluegill can. See, that bluegill, he had no problem with that 1/4 ounce spoon and big hook and the worm on the end. There it is, 1/4 ounce Leech Flutter Spoon. By the way, I'm not sponsored by Clam or Leech or anybody. I just like some of their products. So anyway, I'm going to show you some pumpkin seeds in a minute, and you'll see the difference. So as I was saying, with pumpkin seeds, they're limited to how far they can physically open their mouths. And if you catch one, like this one, he's not hooked very well. He's going to pop off the hook, and that's because his mouth is too small. And so what you need to do then is switch to a smaller spoon. Now, if these were redbreast sunfish and I ran into a school of redbreasts, maybe could even go bigger, because they can really open their mouths. Much more wide than a bluegill. They're almost crappie-like. Some of them get really big. So what I'm going to do is put down that 1/4 ounce spoon. I'm going to go one size smaller to the 1/8 ounce spoon, which is still pretty big for pumpkin seeds or bluegill. It's a decent sized spoon. I've got that in the Glow Fire Tiger pattern. I'm picking patterns based on the Young of the Year perch, and this place has a lot of small perch in it, so I'm leaning towards those perch patterns. But honestly, on a day like today where the conditions are just about perfect, it just doesn't matter. Anyway, I got fresh bait on that 1/8 ounce flutter spoon, and we're going to see if we can catch a bunch more of these pumpkin seeds. Alright, I got the underwater camera in my left hand and a custom bass Kang rod that I built last winter. I did a video on that. I'll link it in the video description of building that rod. But it's a 36-inch Gen 2 panfish rod, graphite. It's super fast, very sensitive. It's almost a little bit too fast for me, so I slow it down by fishing with 4-pound straight mono, and that is the Suffix Ice Magic clear mono. And it just allows me to slow down that rod a little bit, or give the impression that it's a little bit slower. It helps keep the fish pinned a little bit better than if I was fishing braid or braid to leader. It's a great rod, great blank, very sensitive. You can feel everything. You can control the spoon very well. And see, I'm making small little movements there. The rod tip's just moving about an inch. And I missed one. I'm going to give them a chance to eat it. They eat it usually on the paws. And I know, I can't remember if it was this one, but one of them hit it like 8 times before I finally stuck them. And that's partly because I'm fishing with a spoon that's still a little bit too big for these pumpkin seeds. But I'm trying to get the biggest ones out of the school that I can. And I just figured I'd stick with bigger spoons on this trip. See the motions? Very subtle. I know there's a fish there. He keeps grabbing the worm, grabbing the hook, but not really getting it into his little mouth. Yeah, this is the one I missed about 8 times before I finally stuck him. But very subtle movements once I know the fish is there. I'm not even looking at my camera right now. I know the fish is there because I'm getting bites and missing them. And I just need to focus and convince that fish to eat the jig a little bit more. Kind of waving it in his face. And then every once in a while I'll pause and give him a chance to eat it. Like right there. Now I'm pounding it. He hit it again. I missed him. My hand's getting cold. You know what? Maybe I need the camera after all. Sometimes it makes all the difference. You can actually watch him eat the jig. Kind of pounding it. There it is. I think I watched him eat it on that take. Another pumpkin seed. You know, that's another advantage of the camera, is that you can see what species is down there, even if you're not catching them. Like, I know these are pumpkin seeds because I'm catching them, but if you didn't know and they were driving you crazy, with the camera you can tell what they are and adjust as needed until you get some on the ice. With this next fish, I was looking for my jig on camera. I couldn't see it, and I realized that's because the fish had it and was swimming away with it. A little delayed reaction there, but it still worked out in the end. Nice little pumpkin seed. Back she goes. Alright, I think I got one more before I had to pick up. There it is. I'm losing light fast, but they were still biting. I bet I could have stayed out a little bit longer. It was a full moon on this trip too. That might have had them a little bit more active than normal. That's not a bad pumpkin seed. On the 1/8 ounce Glow Fire Tiger Leech Flutter Spoon. Back she goes. Alright, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Just like all my other videos, I'll list all the gear in the video description. Cleaning myself off with some snow. Not a good idea because it makes your hands cold, but I'm getting away with it. I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!